Imagine this. The person you love, the one you've built your dreams around, suddenly tells you they've lost everything, their wealth, their stability, gone in an instant. How would you react? Would your love stay strong, or would doubts creep in? In today's story, we follow Ryan, a wealthy entrepreneur, and Sophia, a dedicated pediatrician, as their relationship is put to the ultimate test. Ryan fakes bankruptcy to see if Sophia truly loves him for who he is, not what he has. But what happens when the truth comes out? Her response will leave you speechless. Stay tuned, because this is a story about love, trust, betrayal, and the power of second chances. You won't want to miss it. Ryan Carter, a 38-year-old tech entrepreneur, stood in his luxurious penthouse overlooking the city skyline. To the world, he was the epitome of success, wealthy, confident, and untouchable. But behind the polished exterior, Ryan carried a deep wound. Years of failed relationships had left him scarred, each one unraveling when his partners revealed their true intentions: money, not love. Sophia Bennett, on the other hand, was everything Ryan thought he could never have. At 30, she was a dedicated pediatrician, spending long hours at the hospital caring for children. Her life was simple, her heart genuine, and her passion for helping others unmatched. They had met at a charity gala Ryan hosted to raise funds for Sophia's hospital, and their connection had been instant. But as their relationship deepened, so did Ryan's insecurities. Could someone as pure-hearted as Sophia truly love him for who he was? Or was she just better at hiding her motives? Desperate for answers, Ryan devised a plan, one that would test the very foundation of their love. He would fake his financial ruin, pretending to lose everything, to see if Sophia would stay by his side. "Will she love me when I have nothing?" Ryan whispered to himself, staring at his reflection in the glass. Little did he know, this decision would set off a chain of events that would test not only Sophia's love, but also his own understanding of trust, honesty, and what it truly means to be loved. Ryan Carter was the kind of man who turned heads wherever he went. At 38, he had built a tech empire from the ground up, transforming a small startup into one of the most successful companies in the industry. His name was synonymous with innovation, and his wealth afforded him a life of luxury: penthouse apartments, designer suits, and exclusive invitations to the most prestigious events. But beneath the surface, Ryan was a man haunted by his past. 2 failed engagements had left him deeply distrustful of love. Both times he had believed he'd found the one, only to discover that his partners were more interested in his bank account than in him. The heartbreak had hardened him, making him wary of anyone who got too close. Then came Sophia Bennett. Sophia was everything Ryan wasn't. At 30, she had dedicated her life to helping others, working tirelessly as a pediatrician at a busy city hospital. Her days were spent treating sick children, comforting worried parents, and juggling the chaos of an underfunded healthcare system. Despite the challenges, Sophia carried herself with a quiet strength and a warm smile that could light up even the darkest room. They met at a charity gala Ryan had organized to raise funds for the hospital where Sophia worked. While most of the attendees were there to network or flaunt their wealth, Sophia had been there for one reason: to advocate for her patients. Ryan had been captivated by her passion as she spoke about the hospital's needs, her eyes shining with determination. Their first conversation had been effortless, filled with laughter and a surprising sense of ease. Ryan found himself drawn to her authenticity, a quality he rarely encountered in his world of high-stakes business deals and superficial relationships. Over the next few months, their relationship blossomed. Ryan admired Sophia's dedication to her work, while Sophia appreciated Ryan's generosity and the way he supported causes that mattered to her. They seemed like the perfect match, 2 people from completely different worlds who had found common ground in their shared desire to make a difference. But as their bond grew stronger, so did Ryan's fears. He couldn't shake the nagging doubt that Sophia might be like the others, someone who saw him as a means to an end. Her kindness seemed genuine, but was it? Or was she simply better at hiding her true intentions? Ryan's insecurities began to eat away at him. He hated the idea of doubting Sophia, but the scars from his past were too deep to ignore. He needed to know for sure. One evening, as they sat together on the couch in his penthouse, Sophia shared a story about a young patient she had treated that day. Her voice was filled with emotion as she described the child's bravery, and Ryan couldn't help but admire her even more. But as he looked at her, a thought crept into his mind. What if this is all an act? That night, Ryan made a decision. He would test Sophia's love in the only way he knew how. He would strip away the wealth, the luxury, and the life of privilege she had come to know. If she stayed, he would finally have the proof he needed that her love was real. It was a risky plan, one that could backfire spectacularly, but Ryan was willing to take the chance. After all, he thought, if she truly loves me, she'll stay. The plan was set in motion on a quiet Friday evening. Ryan had spent weeks preparing for this moment, carefully crafting a believable story about his sudden financial downfall. He had even gone as far as involving his lawyer and a few trusted colleagues to make the situation appear authentic. Sophia arrived at Ryan's penthouse that evening, carrying a small bouquet of flowers she had picked up on her way home from the hospital. She had no idea that the man she loved was about to shatter the world they had built together. Ryan greeted her with a forced smile, his usual confidence replaced by a nervous energy. "Sophia, we need to talk," he said, his voice heavy with feigned despair. Sophia's smile faded as she set the flowers down on the kitchen counter. "What's wrong?" she asked, her tone laced with concern. Ryan took a deep breath and began his carefully rehearsed speech. He explained that his company had been the victim of a massive fraud scheme, one that had drained his accounts and left him on the brink of bankruptcy. He told her that he had lost everything, his savings, his investments, even the penthouse they were standing in. "I don't know how this happened," Ryan said, running a hand through his hair. "I trusted the wrong people, and now it's all gone." Sophia stared at him, her eyes wide with shock. For a moment she was silent, processing the weight of his words. Then, without hesitation, she stepped forward and wrapped her arms around him. "Ryan, I'm so sorry," she whispered. "But we'll get through this. You're not alone in this, okay? I'm here for you." Her words hit Ryan like a punch to the chest. He had expected her to be supportive after all. That was the kind of person Sophia was. But hearing her say it with such conviction made him feel a pang of guilt. "You don't understand," he said, pulling away slightly. "This isn't just a temporary setback. I'm going to have to sell everything, the penthouse, the cars. I don't even know where I'm going to live." Sophia looked at him, her expression soft but determined. "Ryan, I don't care about any of that. I didn't fall in love with you because of your money or your lifestyle. I love you for who you are, and if we have to start over, then we'll start over. Together." Her words were like a balm to Ryan's wounded heart, but they also deepened his internal conflict. He wanted to believe her, to trust that her love was genuine. But the doubts lingered, and he couldn't shake the feeling that he needed more proof. Over the next few days, Ryan began to dismantle the life he had built. He sold his luxury car, canceled his memberships at exclusive clubs, and started packing up the penthouse. He even moved into a modest apartment on the outskirts of the city, claiming it was all he could afford. Sophia, true to her word, stood by his side through it all. She helped him pack, cooked dinner in his tiny new kitchen, and even offered to cover some of their expenses with her modest salary. But as the days turned into weeks, Ryan couldn't help but notice the toll the situation was taking on her. Sophia was working longer hours at the hospital to make ends meet, and the stress was beginning to show. She was still kind and supportive, but there were moments when Ryan caught her staring off into the distance, a flicker of doubt in her eyes. One evening, as they sat together on the couch in his small apartment, Sophia finally voiced the question that had been weighing on her mind. "Ryan," she began hesitantly, "are you sure there's nothing else you're not telling me? I mean, this all happened so suddenly, it just doesn't feel real." Ryan's heart skipped a beat. He had been so focused on testing her love that he hadn't considered how his lies might affect her trust in him. "I've told you everything," he said, forcing himself to meet her gaze. "I wish I had more answers, but this is the reality we're facing now." Sophia nodded, but Ryan could see the uncertainty in her eyes. It was a look that would haunt him in the days to come, as he began to realize the true cost of his deception. Sophia had always prided herself on being a rational person. As a doctor, she was trained to notice details, to question inconsistencies, and to trust her instincts. And lately, something about Ryan's story wasn't adding up. At first, she had pushed the doubts aside, convincing herself that Ryan was simply overwhelmed by the situation. But as the weeks went on, small cracks began to appear in his narrative. For one, Ryan still wore his expensive watch, a limited edition piece that could have easily paid for several months of rent. When Sophia asked about it, he brushed it off, saying it was the only thing he had left from his old life. Then there were the phone calls. Ryan would step out of the room whenever his phone rang, his voice hushed as he spoke. When Sophia asked who he was talking to, he would give vague answers about lawyers or business associates. The final straw came one afternoon when Sophia stopped by Ryan's apartment unannounced. She had finished her shift early and thought it would be a nice surprise to bring him lunch, but when she arrived, she found him sitting at his desk, staring at a stack of documents. "Hey," she said, stepping inside. "What are you working on?" Ryan quickly closed the folder and stood up, a forced smile on his face. "Oh, just some paperwork for the company," he said casually. Sophia frowned. "I thought you said the company was bankrupt." Ryan hesitated for a fraction of a second before replying. "It is, but there are still some legal matters I need to sort out." Sophia didn't press the issue, but the seed of doubt had been planted. That evening, as she lay in bed, her mind raced with questions. Why was Ryan still dealing with company paperwork if everything had been lost? Why hadn't he sold the watch? And why did he always seem so secretive about his phone calls? The next day, Sophia confided in her colleague and close friend, Dr. Emily. Over coffee in the hospital break room, she poured out her concerns. "I don't know, Emily," Sophia said, stirring her coffee absent-mindedly. "I want to believe him, but something just doesn't feel right. It's like he's hiding something from me." Emily leaned back in her chair, her expression thoughtful. "Soph, you've been through a lot with him, but you're one of the smartest people I know. If your gut is telling you something's off, maybe it's time to start asking more questions." Sophia nodded slowly. "I just don't want to seem like I don't trust him. He's already been through so much." Emily reached across the table and placed a hand on Sophia's. "Trust is a two-way street. If he's not being honest with you, then you have every right to find out why." That evening, Sophia decided to take Emily's advice. She began paying closer attention to Ryan's behavior, looking for any clues that might explain the inconsistencies. One night, while Ryan was in the shower, Sophia noticed his phone buzzing on the kitchen counter. She hesitated for a moment before picking it up. The screen displayed a text message from an unknown number. "The deal is finalized. Let me know when you're ready to move forward." Sophia's heart sank. What deal? And why hadn't Ryan mentioned it to her? When Ryan came out of the bathroom, Sophia confronted him. "Ryan, who's been texting you?" she asked, holding up his phone. Ryan froze, his expression a mix of surprise and guilt. It's just a business contact," he said quickly. "Business contact?" Sophia repeated, her voice rising. "Ryan, I've been trying to support you through this whole mess, but you're not being honest with me. What's really going on?" Ryan opened his mouth to respond, but no words came out. For the first time, Sophia saw a flicker of fear in his eyes. "I can't do this anymore," she said, her voice trembling. "If you can't be honest with me, then how am I supposed to trust you?" Ryan reached for her hand, but she pulled away. "Sophia, please," he said, his voice pleading. "I can explain." "Then explain," she said, crossing her arms, "because right now it feels like you've been lying to me this entire time." Ryan hesitated, his mind racing. He knew he was running out of time. The truth was bound to come out sooner or later, and when it did, he wasn't sure if Sophia would ever forgive him. Ryan sat on the edge of the couch, his head in his hands. The weight of Sophia's words hung heavy in the air, and for the first time he realized just how much damage his plan had caused. He had thought he was testing her love, but now it felt like he was the one failing the test. Sophia stood across the room, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. Her eyes, usually so warm and full of compassion, were now cold and guarded. "Ryan," she said, her voice steady but firm, "I need the truth. No more excuses, no more half answers. What's really going on?" Ryan looked up at her, his heart pounding. He knew there was no way out of this. The lies had piled up too high, and the woman he loved deserved the truth. Taking a deep breath, he began. "Sophia, I haven't been honest with you. The truth is, I didn't lose my money. The company is fine. I'm not bankrupt." Sophia's eyes widened in shock. "What?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. Ryan stood and took a step toward her, his hands raised in a gesture of surrender. "I know how this sounds, but please, let me explain. I've been hurt before, twice actually. Both times I thought I'd found someone who loved me for who I was, but it turned out they only cared about my money. After those relationships ended, I promised myself I'd never let that happen again." Sophia stared at him, her expression a mix of disbelief and anger. "So, what? You decided to lie to me, to manipulate me, to test me like I'm some kind of experiment?" Ryan winced at her words. "It wasn't like that," he said quickly. I needed to know if you loved me for me, not for what I could give you. I thought if I took everything away, I'd finally have my answer." Sophia let out a bitter laugh, shaking her head. "And what answer did you get, Ryan? Did you find what you were looking for?" Ryan's shoulders slumped. "I thought I did," he admitted. "You've been so supportive, so selfless through all of this, but now I see that I've hurt you in ways I never intended. I was so focused on my own fears that I didn't stop to think about how this would affect you." Sophia's hands trembled as she tried to process his words. "Do you have any idea how humiliating this is for me?" she said, her voice breaking. "I've been working extra shifts, cutting back on my own expenses, all because I thought you needed me. I've been sacrificing for you, Ryan, and the whole time, it was all a lie?" Ryan stepped closer, his eyes pleading. "Sophia, I never meant to hurt you. I thought I was protecting myself, but I see now that I was wrong. I love you, and I was terrified of losing you. Please, give me a chance to make this right." Sophia held up a hand, stopping him in his tracks. "You don't get it, do you?" she said, her voice rising. "Love isn't about tests or games. It's about trust. And right now, I don't know if I can ever trust you again." Ryan felt his chest tighten as her words sank in. He had been so consumed by his own insecurities that he hadn't considered the damage he was doing to the one person who had truly cared for him. "I need time," Sophia said finally, her voice quieter now. "I need to figure out if I can forgive you for this, because right now, I don't even know who you are." Ryan nodded, his throat too tight to speak. He watched as Sophia grabbed her bag and walked out the door, leaving him alone in the apartment that suddenly felt far too empty. As the door closed behind her, Ryan sank back onto the couch, his mind racing. He had thought he was protecting himself, but in reality, he had been sabotaging the very thing he wanted most, a real, honest connection. For the first time in years, Ryan felt truly vulnerable, and for the first time he realized that if he wanted to win Sophia back, he would have to confront his own fears and insecurities, not with lies, but with the truth. The days after Sophia walked out were some of the longest and loneliest of Ryan's life. The silence in his apartment was deafening, and every corner seemed to remind him of her laughter, her warmth, the way she always made even the smallest moments feel meaningful. Ryan spent hours replaying their last conversation in his mind, each word cutting deeper than the last. He had thought he was protecting himself, but now he saw the truth. He had been selfish. His fear of being hurt had blinded him to the fact that love required vulnerability, trust, and honesty, things he had failed to give. So for Sophia, the days weren't any easier. She threw herself into her work, taking on extra shifts at the hospital to keep her mind occupied. But no matter how busy she kept herself, Ryan's confession lingered in her thoughts. She had loved him deeply, and she had believed in their future together, but now she wasn't sure if she could ever trust him again. One evening, as she sat alone in her small apartment, Sophia found herself scrolling through old photos of her and Ryan. There was one picture in particular that caught her eye, a candid shot of them laughing together at the charity gala where they had first met. She remembered how genuine he had seemed that night, how his passion for helping others had drawn her to him. Was that the real Ryan? She wondered, or was it all just part of the act? Sophia's heart ached with the weight of her conflicting emotions. She wanted to hate him for what he had done, but a part of her still loved him. And that part of her couldn't help but wonder if there was a way forward, if their relationship could be salvaged. Meanwhile, Ryan was determined to make things right. He knew that words alone wouldn't be enough to win Sophia back. He needed to show her that he was willing to change. The first step was confronting his own fears. Ryan began seeing a therapist, something he had avoided for years. In their sessions, he opened up about his past relationships, his insecurities, and the deep-seated fear of being unlovable without his wealth. "It sounds like you've been trying to control love," his therapist said during one session. "But love isn't something you can control. It's something you have to trust." Those words stayed with Ryan as he worked to rebuild himself. He started volunteering at the hospital where Sophia worked, not to win her back, but to reconnect with the part of himself that had inspired her in the first place. He wanted to be the man she had fallen in love with, the man who cared about more than just his own fears. Sophia noticed his efforts almost immediately. At first, she was skeptical. When she saw him helping out in the pediatric ward, reading stories to the children and assisting the nurses, she couldn't help but wonder if it was just another act. But as the weeks went on, she began to see a different side of Ryan, one that was humble, genuine, and deeply committed to making amends. One afternoon, as Sophia was leaving the hospital, she found Ryan waiting for her outside. He was holding a small bouquet of daisies, her favorite flowers. "Hi," he said softly, his voice filled with uncertainty. Sophia hesitated for a moment before responding. "I know I'm probably the last person you want to see right now," Ryan began, "but I just wanted to say, I'm sorry. Truly. I know I hurt you, and I know I can't undo what I did, but I'm trying to be better, not just for you, but for myself." Sophia looked at him, her expression unreadable. "Why now, Ryan? Why are you doing all of this?" "Because I love you," he said simply. "And because I finally understand that love isn't about proving anything. It's about being honest, even when it's scary. I don't expect you to forgive me right away, but I hope you'll give me a chance to show you that I can be the man you deserve." Sophia's heart softened at his words, but the pain of his betrayal was still fresh. "I don't know if I can trust you again," she admitted. Ryan nodded, his eyes filled with understanding. "I know, and I'm willing to wait as long as it takes. I just want you to know that I'm not giving up on us." For the first time in weeks, Sophia felt a glimmer of hope. She wasn't ready to forgive him yet, but she could see that he was trying, and maybe, just maybe, there was a path forward for them. Months passed, and while things between Ryan and Sophia were far from perfect, they were slowly beginning to heal. Ryan continued his volunteer work at the hospital, not as a grand gesture to win Sophia back, but because he had genuinely grown to love it. Spending time with the children and seeing the impact of his efforts gave him a sense of purpose he hadn't felt in years. Sophia, meanwhile, took her time to process everything. She didn't rush into forgiving Ryan, but she also didn't shut him out completely. They started meeting for coffee occasionally, their conversations cautious but honest. For the first time, Ryan wasn't trying to impress her or hide behind his wealth. He was just himself, flawed, vulnerable, and real. One evening, after a particularly long shift at the hospital, Sophia found herself thinking about Ryan. She thought about the man she had fallen in love with, the man who had been so passionate about helping others, who had made her laugh even on her worst days. And she thought about the man he was becoming, the one who was finally learning to let go of his fears and trust in love. That night, she called him. "Ryan," she said when he picked up, "can we talk?" They met at a small park near Sophia's apartment, the air crisp with the first signs of autumn. Ryan looked nervous as he approached her, his hands shoved deep into his coat pockets. "I've been thinking a lot about us," Sophia began, her voice steady, "about everything that's happened." Ryan nodded, his eyes searching hers. "And?" Sophia took a deep breath. "What you did hurt me, Ryan. It made me question everything I thought I knew about you, about us. But I've also seen how hard you've been working to make things right. And I can see that you're trying to change." Ryan's heart raced as he listened, hope flickering in his chest. "I'm not saying everything is fixed," Sophia continued, "but I'm willing to try. If you're willing to be honest with me, completely honest, then I think we might have a chance." Ryan's face broke into a smile, his relief palpable. "Sophia, I promise. No more lies, no more games, just us." From that moment on, their relationship took on a new depth. It wasn't easy. There were still moments of doubt and difficult conversations, but they faced them together with honesty and patience. Ryan learned to let go of his need for control, and Sophia learned to trust him again, little by little. 6 months later, on a sunny spring afternoon, Ryan surprised Sophia with a simple but heartfelt proposal. They were at the hospital, where Ryan had organized a small event for the children in the pediatric ward. As the kids cheered and clapped, Ryan got down on one knee and held out a modest but beautiful ring. "Sophia Bennett," he said, his voice trembling with emotion, "you've taught me what it means to love and to be loved. You've shown me that trust and honesty are the foundation of everything. I don't want to spend another day without you by my side. Will you marry me?" Tears filled Sophia's eyes as she nodded. "Yes," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Yes, I'll marry you." The room erupted in applause, the children cheering louder than anyone else. It was a moment of pure joy, one that marked the beginning of a new chapter in their lives. Their wedding, held a few months later, was a small and intimate affair. Gone were the extravagant displays of wealth that had once defined Ryan's life. Instead, the ceremony was simple, heartfelt, and filled with the people who mattered most to them. As they exchanged vows, Ryan looked into Sophia's eyes and promised to always be honest, to always trust her, and to never let his fears get in the way of their love again. And for the first time in a long time, Ryan felt truly free. Love isn't about perfection. It's not about tests or games. It's about trust, honesty, and the willingness to grow together, even when things get hard. Ryan and Sophia's story reminds us that while mistakes can hurt, they can also teach us valuable lessons about ourselves and the people we care about. In the end, love isn't about what you have, it's about who you are when you're with the person you love. And sometimes, the greatest act of love is learning to let go of your fears and trust in the one who stands by your side. The screen fades to black, leaving viewers with one final question. What would you do if someone you loved made a mistake? Would you walk away, or would you give them a chance to make things right? Thank you so much for watching this story on Emma's Stories. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more heartfelt and inspiring stories like this, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to our channel. We'd love to hear your thoughts. What would you do in Sophia's situation? Let us know in the comments below. And remember to hit the notification bell so you never miss a new story. Here on Emma's Stories, we bring you tales that touch your heart and make you think.